My name is Prani. I'm 70 years old. And I want to begin by telling you something I held inside my body for so many years that it became part of my bones. Something I carried so long that I forgot what it felt like to live without it. I held on to everything, to everyone, to every memory, every wound, every word that was ever spoken to me in love or in cruelty. I held on with both hands, with my whole chest, with every ounce of strength I had, because I believed that letting go meant losing, and I was terrified of losing anything else. But here is what no one told me. Here is what I had to learn through decades of quiet suffering. Holding on was never protecting me. Holding on was the very thing destroying me. And the moment I finally opened my hands and let go, I didn't lose anything. I became free for the first time in my life. I need you to understand where this comes from. I need you to see the woman I was before I understood this. Because if you're listening to these words right now, there is a chance that you are exactly where I was. Gripping something so tightly that your hands are bleeding and you don't even notice anymore. Holding on to something that stopped serving you a long time ago, and believing, truly believing, that if you let go, you will fall apart. When I was young, life taught me very early that things could be taken from you without warning. People you loved could disappear. Safety could crumble overnight. The ground beneath your feet could open up and swallow everything you thought was solid. I learned that lesson before I was old enough to understand it, and it shaped everything about who I became. I became a woman who held on to everything, not because I was greedy, not because I was selfish, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if I loosened my grip even slightly, life would snatch away whatever I had left. So I held on tighter and tighter and tighter until my hands were so clenched that nothing new could enter them. Until my heart was so full of old pain that there was no room for anything else. Until my entire life became an act of desperate preservation rather than actual living. Let me tell you what holding on looked like for me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious. From the outside, I looked like a normal woman living a normal life. But inside, I was a museum of everything that had ever hurt me. I kept every wound on display, every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment when someone I trusted let me down. I replayed those moments constantly, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I believed that remembering the pain would protect me from experiencing it again. If I held on to the memory of being hurt, I could prevent it from happening again. That was my logic, and it made perfect sense to me for a very long time. But here is what that logic actually did to me. It made me live in the past while my present slipped through my fingers unnoticed. It made me see threats where there were none. It made me push away people who genuinely cared about me because I was too afraid to trust them. It made me build walls so high that even I couldn't see over them anymore. I thought I was protecting myself, but I was imprisoning myself. And the prison was made entirely of things I refused to let go of. There was a relationship in my life that nearly destroyed me. Not because the person was cruel, but because of what happened when it ended. When that person left, something inside me broke in a way I didn't know was possible. And instead of letting that grief move through me, instead of feeling it fully and allowing it to pass, I grabbed it. I held it close to my chest like a child holding a broken toy. I refused to accept that it was over. I refused to accept that this person was no longer part of my life. And for years, I lived in a state of suspension, not moving forward, not healing, just holding on to something that no longer existed. Replaying conversations, rewriting endings, imagining what I could have done differently. Living inside a version of reality that only existed in my mind. And all the while, my actual life was happening around me, and I was missing it, completely missing it. Honestly, the worst part wasn't the pain. The worst part was how much energy it took. Holding on requires enormous amounts of energy. Energy that could be used for living, for growing, for loving, for breathing freely. But instead, all of that energy was going toward keeping something alive that had already died. I was exhausting myself, trying to hold water in my hands. And no matter how tightly I pressed my fingers together, the water kept slipping through. Because that is what water does. That is what life does. It moves, it flows, it changes. And when you try to stop it, you don't preserve it. You just exhaust yourself. If you have ever felt that exhaustion, that deep, bone-level tiredness that comes not from doing too much, but from holding too much, then you already know what I'm talking about. You know what it feels like to carry something that should have been set down a long time ago. And you know, somewhere deep inside, that you need to let go. But you can't, because your mind tells you that letting go means you failed, that letting go means it didn't matter, that letting go means you're giving up on something important. And that voice is very convincing. I listened to it for decades, but it was wrong. It was completely wrong. There was a moment that began to change everything for me. I was sitting by a window watching the wind move through a large tree outside my home. It was autumn and the leaves were falling. Not violently, not dramatically, just quietly releasing from the branches and drifting down. And I remember watching one particular leaf. It let go of the branch without any struggle. It didn't fight. It didn't cling, it simply released. And as it fell, it didn't plummet straight down. It danced, it floated, it moved with a grace and a freedom that the leaves still attached to the branch could never have. And something about that image cracked something open inside me. I sat there watching leaves fall for a long time, and I started crying. Not from sadness, from recognition. I recognized myself in that tree. I was the branch, holding on to dead leaves, refusing to let them go, because I was afraid that without them I would be bare, empty, exposed. But the tree wasn't dying by letting go of its leaves. the tree was making room, making space for what would come next. The letting go wasn't loss, it was preparation, it was trust. It was the deepest kind of faith that life would continue even after something beautiful had ended. That image stayed with me for weeks, and slowly, very slowly, I began to examine everything I was holding on to, every old hurt, every resentment, every memory I kept replaying, every expectation I refused to release, every version of how my life was supposed to look that I kept comparing to how it actually looked. And I started asking myself a question I had never asked before. What would happen if I let this go? Not forget it, not pretend it didn't matter, just let it go. Stop gripping it, stop feeding it with my attention and my energy. What would actually happen? And the answer terrified me, because the answer was, I don't know. I didn't know who I would be without my pain. I didn't know what my life would feel like without the weight I had been carrying. I had been holding on for so long that the holding had become my identity. I was the woman who endured, the woman who remembered, the woman who never forgot what was done to her. And if I let all of that go, who would I be? That question kept me frozen for a long time. Because the unknown is more frightening than familiar pain. We would rather hold on to suffering we know than step into freedom we can't predict. And that is perhaps the saddest truth about human nature. But eventually, the pain of holding on became greater than the fear of letting go. And that is when it happened. Not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment. It happened gradually, like ice melting in spring, so slowly you can barely see it moving, but one day you look and the river is flowing again. I started small. I let go of a grudge I had been carrying for over 15 years. A grudge against someone who had hurt me deeply and never apologized. For 15 years I had held on to that anger, convinced that my rage was a form of justice, that as long as I stayed angry, I was holding that person accountable. But the truth was, that person had moved on with their life long ago. They probably didn't even remember what they did, and I was the only one still suffering. My anger wasn't punishing them, it was punishing me, every single day. So I let it go, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. And in the moment I released that anger, I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. Space. Actual physical space inside my chest. As if something heavy had been sitting on my lungs for years and someone finally lifted it off. That experience gave me the courage to keep going. I let go of the relationship I had been clinging to, not the person. The person was already gone. I let go of the fantasy, the alternate reality I had built in my mind where things worked out differently. I let go of the conversations I kept replaying, The endings I kept rewriting. I let all of it dissolve like mist in morning sun. And it hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. It hurt the way surgery hurts. The kind of pain that comes from removing something that was causing damage, even though taking it out feels like violence. But after the pain came relief. After the relief came lightness. And after the lightness came something I had almost forgotten existed. Joy. Not happiness, joy. The quiet, deep, unshakable kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. The kind that comes from within when there is finally enough room for it to exist. I kept going. I let go of the need to control everything. I let go of the expectation that life should be fair. I let go of the belief that I had to earn rest. I let go of the idea that my worth was measured by how much I could endure. I let go of old versions of myself that I had outgrown but was too afraid to release. Each one felt like a small death, and each one led to a small resurrection. Because that is what letting go really is. It is not losing. It is not giving up. It is dying to what was so that you can be born into what is. It is making room. It is clearing space. It is trusting that your hands were never meant to hold everything forever. Your hands were meant to receive and release. Receive and release. Like breathing, you cannot hold your breath forever. At some point, you have to exhale. And the exhale is not loss. The exhale is what makes the next breath possible. I'm 70 years old now. I live simply. I live slowly. I live in a small space surrounded by silence and trees and the sound of wind doing what wind has always done, moving freely, without attachment, without clinging to any single place, just moving. And my life has never been fuller than it is right now. Not because I have more, because I carry less, so much less. And the lightness of that, the sheer unburdened freedom of walking through a day without dragging the weight of everything behind me, that is something I cannot describe with words. You have to feel it. And you can feel it the moment you choose to open your hands. I know what you're holding on to. I don't know the details. I don't know the names or the faces or the specific shape of your pain. But I know you're holding something. I can feel it in the fact that you're still here, still listening, still searching for something in these words. And what you're searching for is permission. Permission to let go. Permission to stop carrying what has been breaking your back. Permission to release what no longer belongs in your life, even though it once meant everything to you. So here it is. From a woman who held on until her hands bled and her heart nearly gave out. You have permission. You have permission to let go of the anger, to let go of the sadness, to let go of the person who left, to let go of the life you thought you would have, to let go of the version of yourself that you've outgrown, to let go of the need to understand why things happened the way they did. Some things will never make sense, and waiting for them to make sense before you can move forward is another way of holding on. Let go of the need for answers. Let go of the need for closure. Let go of the need for justice. Not because those things don't matter, but because your peace matters more. Your life matters more. Your freedom matters more. My name is Pranee. I spent most of my life with clenched fists, holding everything so tightly that I couldn't feel my own heartbeat beneath all that pressure. And then one autumn afternoon, watching a leaf fall from a tree, I understood that the most courageous thing a person can do is open their hands. Not to push something away, not to throw it, just to open, gently, softly, with love for what was and trust in what will be. That is not losing. That is the only true freedom there is, and it is waiting for you right now, in this breath, in this moment. All you have to do is let go, and you will not fall. I promise you, you will float.